We will be recording this meeting, everyone, so that everyone can get this information, even those who are not with us today. So just a FYI.
My name is Ronald Smith. I'm calling from Ward 6.
Good evening, Mr. Smith. Thank you for joining from Ward 6. We got Ward 6 in the house. Thank you so much for joining.
You're
Please
quite
continue.
welcome.
Thank you. So please continue to share your info in the chat, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation and what we got planned for today. So, this is going to be about navigating the housing landscape in 2025. We want to talk today about the performance oversight and budget seasons that are upon us right now. We also are going to have a guest speaker, Amanda Eisenhower from the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, that's going to share some resources for fighting eviction. And I just realized I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Andrea Chapman. I am a community organizer at Empower DC, and I am joined today by my colleague, our community development director, Farah Fosse, who's going to be handling the tech and working the chat today. Thank you all again for joining us. Okay, so what are we doing today? We are going to be strategizing housing priorities for the upcoming performance oversight and budget hearings. I will go over what all of that means in a little bit. We also will be deciding what hearings folks want to participate in. We want to hear from you what you're most interested in. We also will be, like I said before, hearing about those tenant resources to fight eviction from Amanda. So thank you so much again for joining us. All right, so before we get into the performance oversight season and the budget season, we always like to ground this space by making sure that folks know what Empower DC is all about, what our vision and our mission and our values are. So we are a grassroots organization. We were founded in 2003 by our current executive director, Ms. Parisa Norozi, and also another longtime activist, Ms. Linda Leaks. Our vision is DC is a state where human rights and needs are met, systemic harm is exposed and repaired, and empowered residents shape the decisions that impact our lives. The mission is for us to build the power of DC residents through resident-led community organizing to advance racial, economic, and environmental justice. Our values include honoring the history, expertise, and vision of low and moderate income Black and brown residents, building collective power that demands accountability from decision makers, disrupting inequitable and unjust systems and institutions, and persisting in the determined, uncompromising pursuit of justice. And we do that through several, buckets of work. So we have our environmental justice work. We also have our housing work, which brings you all to this place here. So we have our anti-displacement work, and that includes our outreach to folks that are facing eviction. We want to make sure that people know what their rights are and that they have resources to fight eviction, some of which we'll talk about today. We are also interested in affordable housing preservation. We're organizing with residents to improve and preserve and expand access to quality, keyword quality, affordable housing, and also making sure that we're holding landlords that aren't complying with our housing codes accountable. And then we also have our anti-displacement network space, which is this lovely space right here. And that's a space for residents, organizers, and advocates to collectively process and respond to issues around affordable housing and displacement. Thank you for being a part of this space today. So now that you know a little bit about Empower DC, I'll just go over a little bit about performance oversight hearings and why they're so important for us. So performance oversight hearing, and for all DC residents really. So performance oversight hearings typically take place from January through March of each year. This is our chance to lift our issues up to the council. So this is the council's chance to hear from residents, like how did DC agencies do in the last year? Agencies like the Department of Human Services, the Department of Buildings. What can they do better next year? What was your experience interacting with the services that these agencies offered? We also get to hear updates from the government agencies themselves about what they're planning to do differently or not planning to do differently in the next year. Performance oversight hearings can also help to inform the budget priorities that come up right after the performance oversight hearings end, and I'll talk about those as well. And like I said, it's our chance to bring our housing issues directly before the city's key decision makers, the folks that are making the legislation, that are impacting the ways that we interact with our services that the city offers. And I do just want to note your participation is essential, especially residents, especially impacted residents. Your participation is essential. So make sure that you're registering online to testify for those hearings. And I will go over how you can register in a little bit. I also just wanted to note right away that we will have a testimony power hour to really get into, a deep dive into how you can formulate a testimony and the actual process of testifying the day of the hearing. We'll have that on March the 3rd. So today we're just going over what they are, why they're so important, what are the relevant housing hearings, and how you can sign up. And then later we'll go over how you can actually testify and what's important to include in that testimony on March the 3rd. So, we have a lot of housing related hearings to think about. There's a lot of hearings in general. If you look at that calendar, you can
Yeah.
actually look at the calendar at lims.dccouncil.gov, and you'll be able to see a list of every hearing they've got. There's a whole bunch of different ones, but I'm going to just focus on the housing related hearings that we have. So the first well, actually, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because there was the Deputy Mayor Office of Planning and Economic Development. They had a hearing on February the 5th, and Empower DC was able to testify and uplift the importance of equitable development and developing an anti-displacement plan for our city. And so that already took place, but don't worry, there are still tons of hearings where folks can share their experiences and testify. So the first hearing I want to uplift is the Department of Energy and Environment, or DOEE. And this is important because poor housing conditions, including or especially mold, we hear about that a lot in our outreach. That's pushing low income residents out of their homes, and it's also contributing to negative health outcomes. So it's important that we are working with DOEE and strategizing with them on how we can improve the proactive inspections process when it comes to mold remediation, and make sure that the Department of Energy and Environment is coordinating with other government agencies that are responsible for enforcing housing codes, to make sure that they're working together to create safe environments for folks to live in. So that hearing date is on Friday, February the 21st. And you can register at the link that's listed here, or you can also put your name and DOEE in the chat, and Farah will help you get connected. We'll connect you and make sure that you can get signed up for that hearing. I do just want to note, if you are a resident that lives in, housing where you're experiencing mold issues and things like that, it's really important that DOEE hears from you, especially if the landlord has been painting over the mold or hasn't really been addressing it, or if there's other units on the property that have mold issues and those haven't been addressed. Mold can grow and spread. So it's really important that we speak out about that because of those negative health outcomes, especially. The next hearing that we have is the Department of Buildings, or DOB. So that's really important, like I said, for those proactive housing code inspections outside of, for everything outside of mold, and making sure that we're holding landlords accountable for those, for bad conditions. We want to make sure that our housing code is being followed, and that we are also taking steps to detect problems early so that they don't escalate in costs and also further threaten tenant safety. So that hearing is going to be on Tuesday, February the 25th, and you can register again at the link that is listed here, or you can also write your name and DOB in the chat. Farah will get you connected so that we can get you registered.
Just curious, are there folks who have had poor housing conditions or mold? Maybe you all could like raise your hands or um,
Yes.
give a thumbs up or something. It's definitely something, as Andrea said, we see a lot when we're going around. But curious if there's people here.
Oh, I see Miss Kenya got her hand up. Do you want to expand on that a little bit, Miss Kenya?
Yes, I can. Um, I live in housing. They actually just came during the summer. What had happened, I didn't even know the mold was in my closet. Because I had clothes in my closet. So I never, really went back there. It was literally behind the clothes and the coats. Because I had a winter section in the summer. So I went to go get the winter coats and I was like, what is all this stuff growing on the wall? And sure enough, it was mold. So they came out during this time. They had a lot, housing must have had a lot of people that were not housing. Um, how can I say it? Maintenance, but they had a lot of people. I guess they were trainees or, um, um, I don't know, migrants or whatever you want to call it that were coming out. I didn't see no one really with housing on their clothing like they usually have. They tore my wall out. They didn't even ask me to leave. They started tearing my house apart. Went up, cut a hole in my closet wall. Kind of find out it wasn't just in the wall. It was also in my kitchen, over top of my stove where my food is at. So they had to come back and tear a hole in my kitchen wall. And I guess said it was a pipe. I said I never heard of pipes in your closet, but I don't know. I guess it's the way the house was constructed. They had to get the plans for the house. They tore it open, fixed it, but it looked at the tragic. I'm looking the other day because it looked like the snow in the world, and I see water coming. It's coming back. So I have to call them again. They're gonna come back out here. We don't know where it's coming from, but I do, and I think I should ask other neighbors. Are they having issues with mold? Because I can't be the only one, and I don't think I'm the only one. Now I know we have a lot of plumbing issues down here because they stay coming down here with plumbing issues. And by this weather is changing, and then we're getting snow and heavy rain. I'm thinking it's gonna get worse. So they're gonna come back out of my house. I'm gonna see what they're gonna do, but I'm not hopeful about this mold situation because they tore it down, but they painted over it. And the guy said that's not how you're supposed to get rid of mold. And my son has asthma. Thank God he hasn't had any attacks or anything like that. But I've noticed lately, I've been having a little issues with breathing my chest. So I told them. So they fly down your house when you say something about health issues because they know they're wrong. And she was like, "We're gonna get someone to come in." I said, "Well, you need to get somebody qualified in here. That you can't have somebody that's not working for housing, or at least someone to come and inspect this. This is the second time it's happened. So what are y'all gonna do? We're gonna get somebody in there." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm documenting every day calls, dates, and emails that I send to them. And if I don't get nobody out here at a certain time, we're gonna go up the chain of command. And then I will be, like you said, testifying because this is ridiculous.
May I just say something, Andrea and Miss Kenya? I would strongly suggest that you have an appointment with your doctor or your clinic, wherever you go for care, and have it documented in writing that you're having a problem and this is what is going on that you believe is causing part of the problem, and let them follow with treatment and testing. But you definitely need to make sure you have some medical documentation. It's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for uplifting that, Miss Kenya and Miss Charlotte, because actually that's one of the number one of things that we tell people is to please document, get your receipts, make sure you're taking pictures, because that's the number one thing that they're going to say is, oh, we don't see the problem. So, make sure that you have that evidence there. So thank you for uplifting that.
Hello?
Hi,
Hello?
Miss Donna. How you doing?
I'm fine. Now call me D.
Oh, Miss D. I'm sorry. How you doing,
I'm
D?
fine. Um, I had a problem with mold in my apartment, and I lived in the mold for from August, September to May, and then we were going to go. Our property was going to go through lead abatement, so the manager didn't do any repairs in regards to the mold issues, and I had to shut that bathroom down. And I didn't even go in that bathroom. That bathroom was shut down. And what I had to do in all that time period, I used to go to the shelters, these day centers, and stuff like that to take showers and stuff. So anyway, so now we're going. The lead abatement is going to begin in June. So the manager had me sign the lease on May 30th, and then May 31st, I was like evicted from my apartment. Uh, they're supposed to be taking my property. Um, they're really supposed to be taking my property and centering it, and then taking it upstairs to another apartment, right? I ain't get no paperwork for the apartment of anything. But on May 31st, they had a dump truck and they disposed of my property. And so I'm trying to fight against it, but I feel as though I'm getting ignored. I'm very much getting ignored. So I gonna have to need some help from some people, some organization or something, so I can bring it to the forefront, because it's not like I speak, but I'm not being heard. I
Yeah.
need to be um they need to compensate me for the loss of my property. Or however you gonna do. That's not how you're supposed to say compensate, but I have nothing. So I just need some help with some organizations. If you could help me out with helping me to build my paperwork. I got a lot of paperwork, but sometimes it's kind of difficult to get it all together. And I can't do everything by myself. I've been trying, but don't seem like it's working too good. So I just like to know if you'll be able to help me out with organization or something to help me to build my folder, so that when I speak, and here you go, I can present them my documentation.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Dee. And yes, we definitely took down that information. I know Farah, I see her typing away, so I'm sure she's going help you, write down this information so we can make sure that we connect with you. And also Amanda will be sharing some resources, and we'll also might have some helpful tips. So I'm going to keep going so that we can get to all of the helpful information. Please feel free to continue talking in the chat, sharing questions in the chat. We will have a question and answer period later as well. All right, I'm
And
gonna
keep
share.
taking pictures with your phone of everything.
Yes, absolutely, Miss Charlotte. You tell them. Absolutely. All right, y'all. So, there's a lot going on. And like I said, these hearings are a chance to share your experience, just like we heard folks doing just now. We need to get that kind of those kinds of stories in front of the council so they can hear what's going on, and we can hopefully, get legislation and funding to improve the services that we're getting. So continuing on with housing related oversight hearings. So after DOEE and DOB, we have the Office of Planning and the Office of Zoning. So this is all about the community-led equitable development that we need in our city to make sure that we're preserving and expanding affordable housing. And that also includes making sure that we're retaining public land so that we can meet public needs, including our needs for affordable housing. So, I've talked in the space about the work of 1617 U Street, the public land that's owned there, and how there are efforts right now to make that into, excuse me, high-rise, expensive housing. And what we really need is to retain that public land so that we can provide deeply affordable housing, such as social housing. So I encourage you to look back at our YouTube page if you're interested in learning more about that. Anyway, so the Office of Planning and Zoning are important though as well, because we have the comprehensive plan rewrite coming up this year. And that's basically the literal plan for the whole entire city. What are we prioritizing as a city as far as, the things that are being built, the infrastructures we're creating? Are we making sure that we're, building systems that promote affordable housing construction in the future, and right now? And so what's really important in that comprehensive plan is the Office of Planning's anti-displacement strategy. And this is something that they said they were going to do they made an amendment as a part of the previous comprehensive plan. They said they were going to create, the Office of Planning said they were going to create this anti-displacement strategy to really create key measures and requirements to be able to more effectively address the issues with displacement in our city. So that includes making sure that there are specific measures for, how much affordable housing is being built, and, what kinds of, things that we're creating to make sure that people can stay in the city. So it's really important that we press them on that, because they have yet to release a finalized version of that anti-displacement strategy. And because the city is supposedly going to be more focused on racial equity and on this community-led development and on affordable housing, we need the Office of Planning to release a finalized version of that strategy, especially because we know eviction numbers are going up and up. They're at a 10-year high right now. We can't wait any longer. So that hearing is going to be on Tuesday, February the 25th, and you can check out the link here to be able to sign up for it, or you can also put your name and OP/OZ in the chat. And I do want to note that this is going to be a part of the same hearing as the Department of Buildings. So if you are interested in only testifying at one or about one of those agencies, or if you want to testify about all of those agencies, which is awesome, you can check when you get on the registration page, you'll be able to check which agency you want to talk about, so that it's very clear, like, I'm only going to be talking about Department of Buildings, for example, or I'm going to be talking about all three, just so you know.
I have a question. Oh, excuse me. I have a question, Andrea. I don't know where we dropped this, but where do we find out about a particular parcel of land when they start talking about zoning and planning, space that's not been utilized? Just for example, at near 13th and Rhode Island Avenue Northeast, there's a very large parcel of land that has, for I know, more than 6-7 years has not been used, and the infrastructure is in because it used to be a large housing facility. And when they start saying there's no place to build, that we can say, well, this space is it meets the qualifications, and why not? Because it can be low rise or even high rise if they wanted to do that. And they're building in my neighborhood like crazy anyway. So why not let's put some affordable housing in instead of these condominiums?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know where that belongs, but
yeah, so I'll put something in the, or maybe Farrah can put something in the chat about that. I would say maybe going to the DEMPED website and checking out the different sites that they have available. They have usually a list of the sites that are going to be up for rezoning, so you can look. And then there's also, if you go to the Office of Zoning website, you'll be able to see all of the hearings that are related to upzoning. I'm going to keep going because I want to just make sure that we get through through all of the hearings, but we can provide more information for you in the chat and connect with you later about that, Ms. Charlotte. And thank you for your question. And then, yeah, so folks, we will have a question and answer portion at the end, I promise. So, after the Office of Planning and the Office of Zoning, we have the Department of Housing and Community Development, or DHCD. And this is, again, similar to the Office of Planning and Zoning, is really about how we're preserving affordable housing in the city, but particularly through the Housing Production Trust Fund, making sure that we're allocating money from that fund to affordable housing preservation. And then it's also important because of the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, making sure that tenants have the opportunity to have oversight over the purchase of their buildings, and also making sure that we're protecting things like rent control. That's especially important now because the mayor did recently, or actually today, she passed legislation, or introduced legislation, excuse me, to try to shift the way that TOPA is working in our city and to really limit that for folks. So it's really important that we speak up. So that hearing is going to be on March the 3rd. And again, here's the link to register, or you can put your name and DHCD in the chat. So the next housing related hearing we have is the DC Housing Authority, or DCHA. And I know there's a couple folks in here who are voucher holders, a couple folks in here who are public housing residents. And so this hearing is going to be especially important because DCHA, of course, is the agency that oversees public housing and voucher programming. There's been a lot of issues with recertification. There's been a lot of deterioration of public housing, a lot of increased efforts to privatize public housing. So it's really important that we speak up to preserve public housing, to encourage our council to do that, because it is a really essential form of deeply affordable housing. And so that hearing is going to be on Thursday, March the 6th. You can register at the link here, or you can put your name in DCHA in the chat. Daniel, our housing director, he runs our public housing work. We have a public housing power group. We also have a voucher holder power group. So please connect with Daniel if you're interested at testifying at those hearings. He will have, I'm sure, he will be having some testimony trainings around that. So if you're interested, please reach out to him. Farah, could you include Daniel's email in the chat? And I think I do include it later in the slides too. So after DCHA, we have the Department of Human Services, or DHS. So there's been a lot happening with ERAP lately, with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We saw towards the end of last year that Mayor Bowser and the DC Council introduced legislation to restrict ERAP, to make sure that it's less accessible to folks. And we also saw that the funding was cut severely by like 60%. So, and we also saw the recent legislation, which that the mayor just passed or introduced today, to make the changes to ERAP permanent. So to make those limited restrictions permanent. So it's really important that we stand up, we take action to pack this hearing. It's important that folks who have had experiences with ERAP, whether you received funds or you did not receive funds, we need to hear from you. The council needs to hear from you. And we also just need to share the importance of, making sure that we're not restricting tenant protections from evictions. We need to be strengthening them. Right now, there's a lot of narratives in the air from the mayor and our council, which fueled a lot of these policies and changes to ERAP. A lot of narratives around blaming tenants for the issues with providing affordable housing in the city, saying that rental arrearages are the reasons why it's so difficult. So we really need to push back against those narratives and share the truth about what's happening with affordable housing. The fact that housing prices are increasing and wages are not matching up with that. The fact that a lot of low income folks are rent burdened, and the fact that these are some of the most essential resources that prevent homelessness. So please come out to that hearing. It's on March the 5th. We will be showing up and showing out in person. Empower DC wants to be there for that because we know how important it is to make sure that we're preventing displacement. So please come out, join us. We will have training for that, like I said, on March the 3rd. We'll have our testimony power hour, and then we will be there in person. We'll have some prep, and then we'll do some council walkarounds together as a group, as a group. And then we will also, be testifying at the hearing. Even if you're not able to testify and just show up in solidarity, we need you there. So please, please, please show up and show out with us. If you are interested in that hearing, please put your name and DHS in the chat.
And I wanted to mention, somebody asked for the time, and we haven't been saying the time partly because, most of them do start at 9:30 or 10. It can be a little tricky, right? For folks who have testified, like sometimes the council member arrives late, so it doesn't always start on time. And then you usually go in the order that you sign up, but that doesn't always happen. One thing we can do is that for folks who are testifying virtually, we're happy to send you a text a little bit before you're up so that you don't if you don't want to watch the whole thing, you don't have to. If you do want to watch it, you can just watch it and then watch for when your name gets called. For folks who come in person, like for the DHS hearing, we can use the downtime when we're in person, right? So we can actually go visit council members who are in the hearing. So even if it's not our turn to testify, we can make really good use of the time of being there and just really having that presence that Andrea mentioned. But when you do click the link, it'll say the time. Just keep in mind, like the DCHA one will probably go all day.
Yeah, these hearings be long, y'all. Like they could be upwards to 8 hours. So if you do have to step away, if you do have to go to work or, take care of your children, like Farah said, we can update you and make sure that you're able to participate. You can also just keep yourself muted and just have your camera off and be listening and just have it on the side as well. But we got you. We'll let you know. So thank you for that, Farah. So as far as registering for the oversight hearings, you can scan this QR code that we have here, or you can visit the link that we have here. And I'm sure Farah will put that stuff in the chat. And you can also, when you get to that page, you can use the calendar, which I have here at the bottom. I have an example of what that would look like to find the hearing date, and then you're going to click on that. So for example, if you're searching for DOEE, Department of Energy and Environment, you would look for February the 21st, and then you would click register. And so that one is, I do want to just note, because I have it here, it's going to show up as transportation and the environment. So just make sure that you read the agencies that are listed under topics so that you know which agencies are going to be discussed in that hearing. So I can see here that Department of Energy and Environment is, of course, in Transportation and Environment. So I have the right hearing, and then I can click the Register to Testify tab here, and then I would just enter my information, either as an individual or if you're representing an organization, you would just, enter your organization as well. And then you just want to make sure that you click Submit. Make sure you do that so that you get that confirmation email that says that you're registered to testify. And then again, I'm going to keep promoting that power hour that we're having on March the 3rd if you want to get trained up on testifying. And now that I've mentioned that, I do just want to quickly see a show of hands. How many folks have testified at a hearing before? Okay, we got a few folks. Yes, awesome. Wonderful. And how many folks are interested? I see a lot of folks interested in DCHA, folks interested in DHS. Awesome. So I see a lot of folks. So I hope that we can pack that hearing on,
Okay.
especially for DHS. But I'm excited to see that we're going to have a presence though at all of these hearings because that's going to be extremely important. That's how we build power is really, having that presence and promoting what we want to see in our city. So thank you so
I would
much.
love to help. I'd
Yeah.
love to but I just physically cannot be out there because I'm not able to walk. I do need a lot of assistance, and in a position now that I'm 71 and unable to walk and trying to move, and I've been trying to get housing to move me, and it's been a long, long way because where I'm staying at, this house is physically, it made me so sick. Oh, for about 4 years, I didn't know I was inhaling carbon monoxide poisoning. My lungs are so, like a child, and one of them is partially collapsed, and I have a pacemaker in my heart now and have machines everywhere. And I've been trying to get out of this house for over a year. I didn't talk to housing, I didn't talk to everyone. So I'm trying to get out of here, and they keep putting me back on this place. They told me I have it, then you don't. Then want more information. I give them more information. They finally told me today that I need to sign some papers now, and then they got to come and inspect. They still can't tell me when I'm gonna move. And I told them this house is making me sick. The rot, the ceiling leaking, and all. I had lawyers. I had come in and took pictures where they had to replace the furnace and the boiler and the chimney from the carbon. They boarded up the fireplace when I moved in. When I seen the place, it didn't have it boarded up, and I asked them why was it boarded when I moved in. They said, "Oh, because they don't want no one to smoke in the house. That's a part of your lease agreement. You ain't see it. You can't smoke, and nobody can smoke." And all the time, they probably knew it was a leak and didn't say a word. And all the time, I'm getting sicker and sicker till I was falling out, didn't know why. Then they told me that I was losing oxygen when I walked, but they didn't realize all the time I was slowly dying from this house. And I'm still in that house. And I've been trying to get housing to get me out of here. And I still haven't gotten out yet. So, I done been to a lot of meetings. I went to one time to the place to try to get money wants to move, and they put me through the ringer, had me bring all that paperwork up there to ERAP, and then they told me to come back and had this day meeting. They sitting there and put me through another meeting, a day meeting, and then they told me no, they weren't going to help me. I didn't make too much, get too much money. How I'm on SSI? How I miss too much money? They refused to help me get the money to move. And
Yeah.
after that, I never went back to ERAP and asked them for anything because they put me through the ringer and
Yeah.
didn't help me.
No, that's
So
important to share. Yeah.
yeah, so I have to actually get a lawyer to try to work
Yeah.
with me now to try to
Yeah.
get me out of here because it's been hard, to do anything.
Yeah.
I
So,
would love to speak, but I just don't see nothing getting done when I smoke.
right. Well, thank you for uplifting that and sharing all that
Mhm.
you shared. I do just want to mention there is a virtual option for all of the hearings. So if you aren't able to physically make it to the Wilson building, you can always testify virtually. You can always call in virtually. But I hear the frustration that you've been in a lot of different meetings. You've raised these issues a lot and it seems like nothing's getting done. So, I hear that, and that is one of the reasons why we have to keep organizing, because
Yeah,
we shouldn't have to keep repeating these issues over and over again. We should be actively building systems that make it so we get to the root causes, so we aren't coming back here year after year after year. So
yeah,
I do
yeah. Especially
want
you
to
was
thank
born
you.
and raised in I was born and
Absolutely.
raised in Washington D.C. I shouldn't have to leave my home in order to be comfortable after 71 years. I
You
shouldn't have to leave my home. And I just don't feel it's right.
You shouldn't.
Miss
And that's, DC should be taking care of its residents, especially its seniors. So I appreciate you for uplifting that because that is a form of displacement. Poor housing conditions is a key driver of displacement. I do want to uplift that time and time again. That is a key driver. It's not
Ms.
just evictions.
Chapman?
So, Miss D, I'm gonna hold you for just 2 seconds so that we can continue to get through the content. We will have a question and answer portion at the end, I promise. But I so appreciate all the lively conversation, because that's what makes these spaces so great. So I'm just gonna keep going. So like I said, you can testify virtually or in person. And we already talked a lot about the performance oversight hearings we want to participate in. So again, we encourage you to connect with us so that you can be involved. I do just want to briefly share about the budget hearings that take place right after the performance oversight hearings. So that's going to be in March through May of each year. And the council then approves the budget in June. So the budget is important because it really defines the work that we're going to be able to do in the city. I mean, raise your hand. How many times have you heard a council member or a government staff member say, oh, we just don't have the funding. We'd like to help, but we just don't have the funding for this. Or due to budget cuts, we aren't going to be able to provide this service anymore. We saw it with ERAP, right? So that's why the budget is so important. How are we funding what matters to people, like rental assistance and affordable housing? What priorities or issues did we bring up in the performance oversight hearings that we want the council to fund? Because remember, that performance oversight hearing is going to influence what gets brought up at that budget hearing. So we want to make sure that we're participating in both spaces and we're having a presence in both spaces, whether that's virtual or in person, a mix of both, y'all. So please stay tuned for upcoming trainings and actions that we'll have around the budget season, closer to that time. So I know that was a lot of information, and I know that there's a lot of folks that are experiencing some real issues that need to be brought up at these hearings. So I do just want to honor and thank folks for sharing all of that. And we will do our best to get folks connected to the resources that we can connect them to. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Amanda so we can get into our tenant resources to fight eviction. And thank you all again. Amanda, do you want to, or I can just share the screen. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, actually, if you could make me in a second, if you can make me the host so I can demo. But for now, hi everybody. My name's Amanda, usually pronouns. I'm with the DC Bar Pro Bono Center. And I am our associate manager of housing. And that means I am most, I guess, relevant to y'all is I run the hotline known as LT LAN. Or the Landlord Tenant Legal Assistance Network. Now, if you've ever had a case in eviction court, you will have seen that number on top of your paperwork, or maybe somebody from Empower knocked on your door and gave you that number. That is the hotline for all the legal organizations in the city that work on eviction cases. And it's a central intake where we can get you connected to a consultation with an attorney for eviction cases. And so I do want to make sure that everybody who knows, and again, this is really going to be particular to eviction cases. That's where you're going to get the most assistance. Right now, that's where our resources lie. But if you're involved in a court case, or you have a scheduled eviction, or also if you're locked out or have an essential utility cut off, you definitely want to make sure you reach out to us as soon as possible. So that we can connect you with legal advice and resources for your situation for the folks who qualify. And so that number is here on the slide, 202-780-2575. There's also an online intake link that I'm assuming will get sent out to everybody afterwards. Yeah, thank you. If you want to put that in there. So that's where you can make sure that you can have a conversation with an attorney. However, just today, we wanted to let y'all know that we launched a really exciting project called the DC Tenant Eviction Defense Guide. So, as some of you may have been through the process know, you might call LTLAN, you can have a conversation, but we are incredibly strapped for capacity and are not able to represent everybody. Also, at the same time, right, evictions have been increasing immensely. I think in 2024, we saw nearly double the amount of evictions executed from the year before, a similar increase in filings. we're seeing a huge amount of demand, and the city has not put more resources towards this. So nonprofit organizations are doing what they can to try and make up that difference. And one of the ways that we're trying to do this is to provide resources to folks, written resources to folks who are facing eviction so that they can go in, look at the resources themselves, and find legal information that's particular to your situation, right? Because there are some general tips that apply to many eviction cases, and you do actually have quite a few rights in DC, but they really depend on where you are in the eviction process. The information you need gets kind of specific. And so we wanted to have a set of resources that speak to each stage of the eviction process and what you need to know, what you need to say in court, what paperwork you might need to file to get through that particular stage in the eviction process. So if I can take over sharing, I'm just going to show you my screen real quick here. So it's just at this link, rebrand.ly/DC eviction defense. And you'll come to a website that looks like this. Now, I know that most of y'all probably will be on your phones. So let me just show you what this would look like on a phone for reference. It should be a little bit more similar. Can folks see that, or is that too small?
I can see it.
Good,
Okay.
yeah. Although we can see the coding on the side now.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's not much we can do about that.
Okay. It looks fine, yeah.
Yeah, this is the developer mode. So, basically, this is what it will look like if you look at it on your phone. So let's say you scan the QR code, or you type that into your search bar. It'll take you right to this first page here, and there's a couple ways to look at the information. So first of all, if you scroll down, you'll see this process overview, this great graphic that Empower put together that talks to you about what's the whole process of an eviction case, right? Because it's not. A lot of people think that it's, immediately after you get a notice, you have an eviction coming. A lot of people think that you might get evicted on your first court date. There's actually a long legal process before you actually get to an eviction. And you have chances to assert your rights at every step of that process. And so, as you can see here, it starts with a notice and goes through a variety of different hearing types in court, all the way until it actually hits a scheduling of an eviction and the actual execution of an eviction. So all of that takes a long time. And so what we've done here is that you can scroll through this and find the image that looks like the most recent paperwork you received. So if you're not sure what stage you're at in the eviction process, you'll want to take a look at whatever you received most recently, right? Because this is a sequential process. You might have gotten this stuff earlier. So it's really important to pay attention to like what's the most recent thing that you got, and click on the appropriate resource based on that. So the first of all, the notice of intent to file or notice to vacate from your landlords, right? So that's this paper. The text is really, really small because there's a lot of it, but you can zoom in when you're on your phone and see. You have a notice of past due rent. You also have a notice to correct or vacate. These are examples of what they could look like. We also have the initial and further initial hearings. So if you've ever been to court, this is what the court paperwork looks like. Another type of hearing being a bail hearing or a protective order, right? There's a section here if you've missed your hearing or they've scheduled this special hearing type called ex parte proof. Mediation, trial, this stage where they give you the notice of payment required to avoid eviction, which is where they have to tell you how much if it's about rent, they have to tell you how much you owe, at least 21 days before you're evicted, and then an actual writ. This is what the final stage of the eviction process looks like with this writ. So now, when you click on the image, it will take you to a page with the relevant information for that specific stage, right? So remember why I said it's important to look at what's the most recent thing you received. That will make sure you get to the right place in the timeline, right step in the process, and the legal information appropriate to that. So, for example, so this is for writs and scheduled evictions. Say you've gotten that paperwork that looks like a writ. What do I do? You would click on that paperwork, and it'll take you to this guide. That's writs and scheduled evictions, right? So over here we have a graphic format of some of the most basic information that you need to know for that stage. So there's a lot of information here. It's because these things are relatively complicated. Also partly because this was written with lawyers, so it's long. But hopefully if you focus on the flyers that are particular to wherever you are, that's really what the information you need to know. So this walks you through your basic rights, and what you need to do by, like in this case, asking the court for a stay, and what some, in this case, certain scenarios that you could be in, whether it be you're here because you missed a hearing, you're here because you think the judge was incorrect, if there's an issue with notice, or you think ERAP should be able to stop it. And it also goes through some basic frequently asked questions about what exactly is the writ? What do we mean by that? How do I find my actual eviction date? Some of the things that are just not legible or not clear to anybody who's not been steeped in this process and doing this forever, right? Most people who are doing this is their first time dealing with it, right? And they have no idea what what all of these legal terms being thrown at them are. And so the idea behind this is to help clear that up a little bit more. And if you keep scrolling down, there are links for even more information if you want to dig in deeper. There's the plain text version of what's on the flyers with hyperlinks to the relevant materials. You could actually click on something like this and be taken directly to the resources relevant to that stage, the actual paperwork that you need. It should download the paperwork. That's why it's not showing up, is it'll download the actual paper and everything that you need to know for that stage. And then you can also print these out as a PDF. And so there's a similar flyer for every stage of the eviction process, right? So if we're going all the way back up here, there's something for, when you're just at the notice stage, when you've gotten a 30-day notice or 90-day notice, there are resources for that, and what those different things are. If you're just scheduled for your first hearing, we have a guide for what you can do and what your options are to ask for at a first hearing. So we have resources for each of those situations. And just one other thing I want to show you is that we have even more in this menu here. The menu under where it says more, we have more. And this is a list of just a drop-down list of all of the different resources that we have, and where you can check. So for example, I'm looking here in the chat and I see Ms. D was specifically talking about an unlawful eviction. So we actually have a section for that, for example, right? In DC, it is considered an unlawful eviction if they don't go through the court process, right? So in this case, you'd look at, okay, I was locked out, our utilities were cut off, and you'd be looking at this particular guide to what we call self-help and constructive eviction. So if your landlord changed your locks and didn't tell you about it and didn't get permission from the court to change your locks, this is where you want to be. And this will tell you a little bit about what that means, and what some of your basic rights are, what the eviction process should look like, and how to know if they're not doing it legally, and what you can file what you can go down to the court and ask them for to try and get them to fix the issue. Similar here with constructive eviction or like utility shut off or something, or where it's uninhabitable. So do folks have other specific, if folks have other specific questions or situations, I can maybe help navigate, because again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not supposed to provide legal advice. But the cool thing about this is we can help you navigate to the right place in the process. So if folks have other things that they want to look at, or if the people want to pop them in the chat, or think maybe you have an upcoming hearing or something like that, I can direct it to the right place.
One that we see a lot, or, unfortunately that we hear from sometimes, is somebody who missed a hearing and has a default judgment. And, they may have a good reason for it. Where could we send them?
Absolutely. So if you missed a hearing, that would be here, right here. I missed my hearing, or I have an ex parte proof hearing, and you'd head just to this tab. Here, again, they don't always tell you if you've missed your hearing, which makes it a little complicated, right? But if that's your particular situation, you can head to I missed your hearing, and it'll take you to this fun orange flyer, which will tell you a bunch of steps that you need to know if you missed your hearing. It talks you through checking the docket to figure out what actually happened, which is an important tool to look at your case and understand what's going on. Because again, they won't necessarily tell you, right? And then it gives you some of the potential scenarios that could have happened and what you would do, right? If it was postponed to another hearing, if you actually had a default in what you would file, and all sorts of different options for what you can do depending on what you find. So that's definitely one of our most commonly seen situations, and it goes through a variety of information for that stage. Ms. McKeever, so it depends, actually. If we go back to our handy dandy little graphic in the process, Ms. McKeever asked if most hearings are virtual or in person. When you're at this stage, the initial hearing, and sometimes mediation, but we're talking early on in the process, those are often virtual, although you always have the option to show up in person. And I always recommend for folks, like if you are worried that you're not going to be able to log in, you're worried about having a tech problem, you can always show up to the court in person. But then you run the risk of like hitting traffic and being late, right? So you got to pick what option is right for you and for your situation. But usually here early on in the case, it might be virtual. And later on, when we're talking about mediation or trial or things like that, those tend to be in-person hearings. So usually your first couple hearings might have a virtual option, but if you continue to your case, you'll probably have hearings scheduled in person. So the answer is, as always, it depends. And yeah, exactly. You can always go in person, even if it is virtual. There's always the judge is always in person, so you can attend in person. Yeah, and then Misty, just your question. What I recommend for getting individual help with this is to reach out to the Landlord Tenant Legal Assistance Network if you haven't already, and that's where we can get you connected. So this resource is not intended to be a replacement for talking with an attorney at all. This does not replace talking with an expert, getting a consultation on your case. But there are times when you're not going to be able to do that, or you're not going to be able to get to help in time. This can be an important resource for that situation. Any other questions or examples on specific examples they want from this?
I don't know if this is a question or more just something that's on my mind, because we've heard a lot about housing conditions, poor housing conditions as a common defense. So I don't know if maybe we can just talk a little bit more about that, and for folks that are facing unlawful or what they believe is an unlawful eviction, especially, how can we use poor housing conditions as a defense for that?
Yeah, so it's going to show up in a lot of places in your case, right? Thinking about process, so it depends on where you are in your case. If there's a case filed against you, At your initial hearing, which is your first hearing, you can ask, you can always ask for more time, and you can always ask for a trial. And if you, I don't know if you can see this, it's pretty small print here, but when you have the options here to request a bench or jury trial, you can say you have defenses, which is reasons why the landlord should lose, and those include housing conditions issues or ledger mistakes, or other things. So when you ask and when you say I have housing conditions issues, what should happen is that is a couple things. They schedule a trial, and mediation before that, right? Where you could get those addressed. It also sometimes happens if your landlord wants what's called, you have it down here, a protective order, which is basically where they're like, hey, while this case is in court, we want you to pay the rent to the court, so we ensure that the rent is getting paid. It's all, then what you're going to do is you're going to ask for a bell hearing, where basically you talk about, here are my conditions problems, and here's why I don't think this is worth the amount of rent you're charging me, because this unit is in bad shape and it's not worth the amount you're charging me. So there is a couple ways that comes up, but the important thing is that if this is absolutely a defense that you can assert, but you want to make sure you're doing it at the right time. And which is why another big thing that we have here, and it's a tip for everybody, is that especially early on in your case, you do not want to admit that you owe money. And if you ever, because that could be a problem, even if you're saying, well, but the problem is, they haven't fixed my toilet, or I still have mold. You want to make sure you're saying, so that's going on, but you don't want to admit that you say, but I know that I owe money, but you want to say, I want a trial because I think I have housing conditions problems that should be a defense in this case. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much for that. I do see a question in the chat, or I don't know if it's a comment or if the question's been answered about self-help evictions.
Yeah, and so we do have specific under here, under more, if you go down to I'm locked out or my utilities are cut off, we have a self-help eviction flyer. And this will walk you through what is a self-help eviction and what your options are, what you can file if that has happened. And I know with these cases, especially, it's not always easy to get legal assistance. Sometimes things happened a really long time ago. It can feel really daunting to try and get connected to an attorney and get legal assistance, because the landscape can be so bleak. But you do have options, and we're trying to give you as much as we can to chances to information about how to do this yourself, if you're not able to get there. Ms. Darby, shake me, Darby.
Yes, can you go over what like the notice to correct or vacate and what that actually means?
Right.
And,
so that's
what stage it is, if there is an eviction that comes after that?
Absolutely. So we're back to this main page here. I received a notice of intent to file or a notice to vacate. That's this first one right here. Again, it'll be easy. You can zoom in when you're on your phone. I'm just on my computer, so it'll be harder. But you could click on this sample notice to vacate. So, okay, looks like what I have. It'll take you to this guide for pre-filing eviction notices, right? So I know that's kind of a technical word. Pre-filing just means it's before they've started in the court process, right? They're required to do a notice first. And so we call these pre-filing notices. And on that first page, you can click on that notice that you received and come here. It will take you, and we have a whole section on notice to correct or notice to quit is what it's called for lease violations. And it talks about what it is, what your rights are, and what happens next when you get one of those things. So if you're dealing with a 30-day notice for correct or vacate, I would start here. Yeah.
Who is that from? Is that from like the court or from like your landlord?
Great question. That's always the landlord. And so again, this is really tiny print. You won't be able to see it, but this is from it says here like via private process server. It's going to come from your landlord's attorney, most likely. So it's usually like signed by like a law firm or something like that. Sometimes they do it themselves if they're not represented. But it's either landlord or their attorney who sends that. It's not from the court. If it's from the court, it'll look something like this, and it'll have this little court seal on it. It'll look more official.
How do they serve it to you?
So process service is like a complicated thing. I'm sure y'all have seen it, like you've been served on TV or whatever. It's similar to that, right? Somebody other than the actual landlord has to serve you the notice. And so usually they do it either by posting on your door, or they make multiple attempts to try and do it in person. They might bang on your door a lot. That happens a lot. But I won't get into that because that's a little bit into like legal information that I shouldn't be providing as a non-attorney. But usually it's somebody other than your landlord is gonna make sure that you get this information either by knocking on your door or by posting it on your door.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions, folks?
I have a question.
Mhm.
I was looking. My name is Ray McKissick, and I want to thank you all for all this useful information. I was looking, I guess, online one day, and there was something about bid CID, this fellow, Landis Manzor. He wrote a thesis and won a 2023 capstone award for the urban and regional planning program. And he was saying something about what they were doing in Southeast, trying to preserve a way to preserve affordable housing with all of the development that's taking place there. And he was, had some suggestions and different things like that. And I was just wondering, I'm sure you all know about it. I think it was out of Georgetown University, this program. I was just wondering if you could comment on that particular thing, the regional, urban and regional planning program. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you
I'm
for
gonna toss
that.
that to Andrea. Yeah. I toss it back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And Farah, please feel free to jump in here. I guess I would just say that with all of our projects, as far as like planning and urban development, our concern is making sure that we're choosing a plan that's community led, that the community knows about in advance, and we want to make sure that there are racial equity impact assessments done. And one of the biggest things is making sure that the plan isn't forwarding displacement, and that and I do just also want to, note the differences between like what is actually affordable and, what people claim to be affordable, because we often see that tools like inclusionary zoning, for example, doesn't really cover like DC's lowest income renters, people that are in that 0 to 30% low income, median income range. So, extremely low income people. So I would just say that my take is that just like any development, that's what we're fighting for. Just making sure that those things are in place, and yeah, just making sure that our planning and our zoning is, supporting that. And that's why that anti-displacement strategy is so important.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Are you finished? Because I have a question. Can you hear me?
I have one more before
Okay.
I can do that. I lived in DCHA housing for 24 straight years, same apartment, and in Northwest, and now I'm in Northeast in HUD property that's owned by a church, and I've been here for over 4 years. And when we came, there was they always had a guard or receptionist at the desk to let know who was coming in and who was out, who was going out, and they had to sign and so forth. Recently, they have let the person on the desk during the week go. They still have somebody at night and in the evening and at night and on weekends. And they have promised that somehow they would have some way of buzzing people in, or we would have a way of buzzing them in. They would have to call us over. And they say they want to send out letters. They haven't sent out anything. And during the day, people can just gain access to the building without the person having a proper notice. And I know tenants have rights and stuff like that. What can be done to address this lack of security during the daytime in this? It's a HUD property, but what can be done to address this lack of security?
Do y'all have a tenant association?
I know we have a board. Some people are on the board, but they say that they're not getting the response. Some people have gotten off the board because they say it's futile to get something done. That type. So
okay. Well, we should probably maybe brainstorm about it outside of this meeting, but I do think, in general, maybe through your tenant association, through meeting with the owner, possibly through our council member, could get some assistance. It is, it is a problem. It's a reduction in services, right? When they stop doing things that they previously did that you initially signed up for. So you have rights here, but it can be hard with stuff like this, as you're saying. But together, if they're hearing from a lot of people, that's going to have more of an impact, right?
Well, I'm thinking about, I've heard from other people that said, voice the same concern I have. And I'm thinking about somehow going down to the manager's office and say, hey,
Yeah, I would start with that.
All right, I'm finished.
Go ahead, Michael. I saw that.
Okay. I went to a meeting today at the Wilson Building where the mayor, this rental act that she's putting before the council, and it has a lot to do with ERAP and stuff like that. But my question is, years ago, when Homeward DC and all, when they were closing DC General and all, the thing with the ERAP, from what I got gathered at this meeting today, one of the problems that we're having is people aren't paying. People with vouchers, such as myself, aren't paying their portion of the rent. Okay, and it's up to 100 and some $1 million. Okay, this is the thing is, years ago, this problem was brought up, and there were solutions to this problem. So, how can an agency let this problem balloon so big and then take no responsibilities? Now they're talking about bailing them out with this stuff that the proposal that the mayor is putting before the council, but this is a problem that's created by people that run housing. You know, there's really no definition to something like permanent supportive housing. If you say permanent supportive housing, then that every agency should have the same definition. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you live in a building in an area and they flood that building with people who aren't capable of living in a building. I mean, you have some people that their mental illness or their whatever is so severe that they're supposed to have people permanently supportive that check in upon these people. Well, they're not doing that, and I know that that nonprofits don't have the money to that. But I guess in this thing that the mayor is proposing, there's nothing really tangible that's gonna help anybody that I see. I mean, it's just the problems in DC and housing and stuff. It seems they just keep ballooning. When you bring these things up, such as the gentleman that just talked, myself, they really don't hear us at all. That's my comment.
No, you're right. I absolutely agree. I mean, I hear you. They aren't listening, and that's the problem. That's why we have to speak out. And you know, I guess we do have to unfortunately navigate in the system in the sense that we need to be able to intervene and be able to speak up at these hearings, but also it's about transforming that system. So, you know, I hear you. And those are some of the key issues we're seeing. And I think that yeah, the landlord lobby, that's exactly what I was just about to say. That so the landlord lobby that Amanda is talking about is like the apartment and office building association. It's AOBA is the acronym for it. And they created this super long report talking about how affordable housing is being threatened due to rental arrears. And while yes, people are struggling to pay their rent, they're not discussing the fact that we are seeing, you know, lack of landlord accountability, lack of landlord compliance with regulations, you know, and we're not seeing an effort by, or a big enough effort by the city to improve that side of things because you know, the blame is just being solely placed on tenants. And so that's what we're working to shift here. And that's why, you know, these hearings are so important, is because we need to shift that. And you know, I also want to say, like, you know, we heard from Amanda about all of these wonderful helpful resources, but the reason why we had to create so many helpful detailed resources is because we're seeing a severe lack of prioritizing, you know, tenant support services. We're seeing you know, the city defunding these services and creating more and more restrictions to programs that are supposed to be helping people to stay in their homes. So that's why it's all the more important to be taking action right now at these hearings. And beyond that, we will be doing actions beyond these hearings, which I'll share about a little more in a second. But you know, I just wanted to throw that out there, that there's a reason why we have to provide these kinds of resources, and while they are helpful, and we want to shout out Amanda for, you know, creating these wonderful resources and sharing all the details about them, you know, it's really like we need to, as a city, like make sure we're not just letting these problems balloon up, as Michael just said. So sorry for that long rant, y'all. I just had to get that out there. Like, I definitely feel that, Michael. So, all right.
I have one
Oh
more
yeah, go
thing
ahead.
that's really important, and that is that they're talking about ending home rule. Now, if any resident in the District of Columbia, you know, when home rule was passed in the 70s, the city was mostly black, but now that the demographic of DC has changed, how are they going to change home rule? And are the 700 residents of the District of Columbia going to sit back and let somebody from Utah tell us how to spend our money? And if people aren't outraged, black, white, blue, green, if you live in DC, then you really should be outraged at them even thinking about changing home rule. Sorry.
Amen.
Yes.
I
Amen.
agree.
I'm so glad you brought
100%.
that up. Yes.
Yes.
Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's more than just the local stuff, y'all. Like it's federal too. Like the federal
Yes.
things that are happening, the new administration that we have, all of the new stuff that was included in that Project 2025 plan, like all that stuff is going to impact, the way that our local government is running. So, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Michael, because yes, it's important to protect home rule as well, so that we can make our own decisions, or the people that live in DC can make their own decisions about what's happening with our resources. I see a
Home doesn't
couple
seem
more.
like home anymore. I
You
say
said,
home doesn't seem like home anymore to
mm,
me. After all the years of being raised and brought up here in Washington D.C., and it just seems like I've seen so many changes by me losing my mobility for about a year now, and so I have to be transported around now by ambulance. So when I ride in the ambulance to go, the only time I go out is when I have to go to the doctor. So I always ask them to let me sit up so I can see out of the windows. I have seen so many changes, places and buildings. They weren't there a year ago, and it's like buildings on top of buildings, and it just looked totally different. I didn't even know my own hometown. It doesn't look the same. It's not the same at all, and mentality that I was dealing with them now is some of it very negative and some of it can be very positive. But when you try to get help over the phone, when you can't, when I used to be more mobile and I can get out and get to resources and get help, it's very, very different now that I can't get out and I have to do everything over the phone. Or even do it on the internet, or even I have to order my food and have it delivered because I can't go in the grocery stores anymore. So my whole lifestyle had to change. So now that everything has changed for me, I had to rescope everything out. As a woman that's 71, had to figure out how to do all of these things all over again, and all of this and that, this and that. I never had to use a computer like this before. I never had to order. I never had a screenshot. I never, but I had to go to my grandkids. How do you do this? How do you do that? And I had to master these things again. So it's kind of different for me. And then to find out that something was making you sick and you didn't know it, and then you try to get help from an attorney and nobody won't help you. I said, well, why? It's like people don't care the way they used to since COVID. And people don't feel the way they used to before then. And it kind of makes me sad because what happened to the people with that heart that loved you? But I go to these meetings and I go to these things because I know there's still people out there that do care and do want to help. And it really makes me feel good to know that there are organizations like yours and other people out there that really care enough to be involved in these things, to see that they need these changes. And it is necessary. And I condone y'all for that. I really give y'all the greatest for these things because it means a lot to me as an older woman to see y'all young ladies and young men, doing what y'all supposed to be doing to keep things the way it should be. Not the way it is. Fighting for rights is a good thing. And if you all come together as a unified force, things can happen. Believe me, they will. I may not live to see it, but I know it is going to happen, And I don't try to go too far with it anymore because a lot of people get upset with me when I talk too much. They say I talk too much. But I don't try to talk too much. I just know that I love life. I love living. I love being able to see things and do things and move around. And I never give up. I'm never going to give up that I'm never going to walk again at 71. I'm not going to say, oh, this is it for me. No. So I'm going to always fight for everything that I think is right. So I came onto this thing tonight because I love the empowerment of things. You know, I love to feel people feel good about themselves and do things positive with their lives, you know. Even if I can't be there in the physical, I'm going to be there in the mental part of them. And thank you so much for letting me come on tonight. I'm going to leave now and have a nice night.
Thank you
Miss
for coming
McKeever,
on.
don't go yet, please. I would like to commend you and thank you for being a part and the heart that you have. I too, I am a 76-and-a-half-year-old wheelchair bound person who has to have help. What I would love to see you is have them wheel you in by ambulance, helicopter, skateboard, anything into a chamber, a hearing chamber, and let them see you face to face and hear your story because it needs to be told. And the closed mouth does not get fed. So you talk all you want to talk, honey. You say
Yeah, they
from
won't.
your
They
heart
won't bring
what
me
you
nowhere. I gotta. They told me I trying to move right. You know, they told me it's gonna. They're gonna charge me $100 to move me from this place to my new home because Medicaid do not pay for me to go nowhere but to the doctors, but not for nowhere else in no stretcher. So I gotta pay cash for it.
you have metro access. As
I
I
can't
understand it,
walk.
there's
I
no,
can't walk.
I can't
I
either.
can't walk. Well, so they have not trained me to transfer to the wheelchair.
I
I
see.
can only so they take me by the stretcher.
I see. Okay.
So because I can't move my extremities like I want to, you know, I have to be shifted over. So and
I
therefore I couldn't ride Metro SS no more. I'm
Yeah.
trying to
yeah.
get back to that point where I used to could, but my legs got weaker. I don't know what happened.
Well, tell
Anyway,
your doctor you want physical therapy and insist on it.
I
You're
didn't ask
entitled to
for I
that.
didn't ask for all kinds of stuff. They give me the blues, baby. I can't. I would love to talk more about everything, but it's kind of rough for me. Yeah, I don't have many friends, so and I think this is good for me too to get on and talk and meet people and grow a little bit and you know not be so into the room more out and still feel like I'm out and about a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm
Well,
Hmm.
so
we thank
glad.
you.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's what we want.
We thank
That's
Yeah,
the
you.
kind of space we're trying to create here. I'm just gonna
yeah,
cut in just so I can get to the next steps. I realize we're coming up on 8 o'clock, but I
yeah,
appreciate all the conversation.
yeah.
Um,
Me too.
Let me just share my screen one last time. I know some people might have jumped off, but that's okay. We'll send them in the follow-up email. We'll send all this information. But briefly, I just want to share. So, we have this anti-displacement meeting space. Typically, it used to occur on a monthly schedule. I do just want to announce that we are going to be changing that slightly. So we'll be doing, 3 to 4 times a year for this particular meeting. And we'll be providing broader updates and information, and letting people know
Okay.
how to join our work. That doesn't mean that we won't have other events and activities for folks to engage, and that includes hybrid options. So we will be reaching out to y'all about that. So please just join our campaign related and other in-person activities. You know, we do a lot of information processing, but we also want to make sure we're making space for action and for campaign strategizing. And we want to make sure y'all are a part of that and that we all have the energy for that. So that's why we're doing that slight shift. So with that being said, like the next anti-displacement meeting is going to be in May, and that will cover a sort of debrief of the performance oversight and budget season. But like I said, we will have all of those meetings and activities in between for folks to continue engaging with us. I also just want to remind folks about the Testimony Power Hour on March the 3rd, and to make sure that we are packing that DHS hearing. If you can show up in person with us, please do so. We'll be there on March the 5th.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
and like I said, there's always virtual options.
All right.
We will also be sending the dates for the performance oversight
Okay.
hearings that we talked about earlier. They can change sometimes, so just be mindful of that. Always make sure you're looking at that hearing management system website that we shared with folks, and make sure that you register as soon as possible. So that way, excuse me, you have all of the Zoom information if you're testifying virtually, or the hearing time if you're going in person, and the address, of course. If you are a public housing resident or a voucher holder, just a reminder to reach out to Daniel at empowerdc.org if you want to learn more about how you can testify at the DCHA hearing or get involved in the public housing power and voucher holding power groups. And you can always reach out to LT Land, the Landlord Tenant Legal Assistance Network, if you have any questions about the resources that Amanda shared. And then lastly, if you want to connect with us, please join us on social media at EmpowerDC. You can also go to empowerdc.org and get signed up for campaign updates. You can just click the tab under the website homepage that says, for our campaigns, and then you can click housing justice, and it'll lead you to all of our housing work and how you can get signed up for it. And then lastly, we, like I said before, we are shifting our work to more campaign actions, to more in-person activities and things like that. So we are also revamping our membership. We want to make sure that we're creating a very, involved process. We want to make sure residents are involved not only in the actions, but also in the planning. So, and we're doing that both for our housing justice work and also our environmental justice work. So we encourage you to join us as an active member. You can reach out to me if you want to learn more about doing that. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Wait a minute. I have one question.
Yes, absolutely.
I have one question. This is very quick.
Okay, go ahead.
For the meeting chat in which we've all most have participated in, can we get a copy of this sent to us as well? Because there's a lot of information in there as far as the Zoom meeting. I mean, not the Zoom, but the organizational websites and all of that stuff that is that's when expressed there. So I asked if we could get the chat too, because then I could print the chat out and then I could just cross off what I want, who I want to go in the organization I want to go to, and then I go to the next one and do all of that. So I would ask if we can get the meeting chat as well.
Yes, you're on it. So we can you can download the chat. Oh, well, I guess I can download the chat. I can try to copy and send it to you. It looks like you can click the three buttons at the top. I don't know if that's for everyone, but I'll also say we are going to record this meeting, or we have recorded this meeting, so we will be posting it on YouTube. And if there's any other information or links that were shared, we will be sending them in the follow-up email. So,
but my question was, I'm going to be finished in a minute. But we can view this meeting on YouTube, but how we view the chat?
Yeah, we're gonna so I can download the chat and I can send it to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. And I would like to say to all and everyone who each word was heard and was understood in a better way than I've ever heard it before. So I thank you all for inviting me, and I thank you all for participating to help me to think in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really want to thank all of you for making this space so special. I mean, really, you're the ones that contributed all this conversation, had us, considering what our priorities are and everything. So thank you for shaping this space and for making, for your contributions, for your thoughts. We really appreciate it as always.
I have one more question.
When is the next chat like this?
When's the next meeting? So the
Yes,
next
yes.
Yeah, so the next anti-displacement meeting is going to be in May. And that'll be a debrief of all of the hearings that we talked about. But don't worry, there are going to be other chances to engage with us before then. So we will send out invites to the different actions that we're having. The key thing I think that's coming up will be that testimony power hour for DHS, and then the hearing that same week, where we'll be engaging and taking action to testify. So I will definitely make sure that everyone's updated. We'll send the newsletters, we'll send the emails. We got you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, y'all. Thank you again to Amanda for sharing all that information. Thank you to Farah for minding the chat. And thank you everyone else for joining us this evening. Y'all take care and have a good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Blessings.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Thank you.